It's a great day for going for a ride on the bike, isn't it? Wouldn't it be good if we had a bike show to go to? Well, we have, right in here, because this place is GMEX, and this weekend it's home to the Manchester Motorcycle Show.
And of course, at any bike show, you'd expect to see all the new models, such as here on the Honda stand, the brand new CBR 600.
And of course, you'd want to visit the Yamaha stand, and if you do that, you'd perhaps have to have a look at the new 1000cc Phaser over there, or even this, the new beautiful FJR 1300.
Or you might want to look at a brand new production bike that actually looks quite old, and this is this Triumph Bonneville. It's a beautiful bit of kit. In fact, I remember when they were first out. Not, because I'm far too young. Paul probably does, Jeff certainly does. It's gorgeous, with loads of chrome.
So while we're talking about production machines, how about this for something a little bit different? Well, a lot different actually. Look at it. It's a huge thing. It's actually a trike, not a production bike, but it's a production trike. Yeah, you can actually go and buy one of these. They make them ready-made. They're called boom trikes. They come from Germany, but they're distributed by a company just up the road in Bolton in Lancashire. Volkswagen powered, absolutely enormous thing. And would you believe something like this is actually less than £11,000, yeah, for a production trike like this. The only problem is, I don't think it'll fit in my garage.
Well, so much for the production bikes. At this year's show, Wayne and I decided to concentrate on something a little different. We decided to have a look at the specials, the bikes which are better known as the street fighters.
You know, the thing about these specials is it's like it's a quiz really. It's like a game, guess the bike. Some of them are quite obvious, and certainly things like this, because probably the most common engine in the street fighter type scene is the Gsxr motor. So here we go, big black Gsxr 1100 lump there. In fact, the engine, the frame and the tank all belong to the same original bike, Gsxr 1100, but that's really as far as it goes, because the rest of it's well, a few bits and pieces, and a few specially made bits and a few aftermarket bits as well. This seat unit, look at that. You might well recognise that. Ducati 916, although it's got some modifications. Of course, the lights aren't anything like they would have been on the original Duke. The swing arm as well down there. That is, again, it's Gsxr, but it's not off the original bike, and it's been modified as well. Got this big brace across the middle there, and of course all polished up to look very nice and shiny. The obligatory noisy exhaust can, you've got to have one of them. Can't go anywhere without one of them if you're on a street fighter. Wheels, well, they're Gsxr again, but off another Gsxr. The carbs are off another Gsxr. There's loads and loads of different bikes put together this. Up here, a lot of modifications up here. And the thing with this is you can't just go and buy your aftermarket bits. You don't just bolt them on and stick a street fighter together. It doesn't just happen, doesn't just appear in your garage out of a box of bits. You've got to think about it. And very often you've got to make the parts that you're going to use. And this here, look at this top yoke. How's that for modifications and thought and imagination? Look at that. I mean, it's beautiful, isn't it? It's a work of art. Behind that here, just come round here and have a look at this. You've got to see this here, because you miss it if you blink. Look at that. That's the Speedo. That's a Speedo, actually, would you believe, off a push bike. But it works, it's legal, and I do believe it goes up to 180 miles an hour. Although how he knows that, I don't know. Front end, the forks again, not off the original bike, but they are Gsxr. And all the aftermarket bits and pieces that you just stick on it really. They got your braided hoses and little fancy indicators, nice lights and bits and bobs, and again, a bit of homemade stuff up here for the warning lamps. But the thing that you notice on it is these, look at the size of these. Renthal bars, about the widest you can get. Donny, who actually built this from the Street Fighter Owners Club, his shoulders are about this wide, so he probably needs bars this big. But the thing with these bikes is, you know, it's an expensive thing to do. I know that he bought the original bike, which had some of its bits on it, but it wasn't anything like this. He bought it for about 3,000 quid. He's now put a lot of time and effort into it, and money, and he's produced this beautiful creation, and he's up to about £7,000. But the sad thing is, if he was to sell it, he'd get nowhere near £7,000 back for it. But that's the price of looking different.
It's not unusual to see these street fighter machines just on display, created for their beauty, but in this case it's created for its beauty and its practicality, because this particular one is an award winner, but not for how beautiful it looks, but how fast it goes. In fact, it's done 10.9 on the quarter of a mile on the straight liners specials that they have in the Isle of Man this last year. Obviously it goes very, very quick, and obviously you have to be a muscle man to hang on to it, and apparently the guy who owns it, Inche, is massive. And the sign says don't touch. Well, I'm not really touching, I'm just Sat on it, aren't I, really? And he's even known for having an extension of 9 inches, down here on the swinging arm that is, which helps him with his extra fast straight line speed. It's awesome. I wonder if he's left the keys. No, just my flaming luck.
Now, we can't all buy a brand new bike, we can't all afford a brand new bike. We can't all walk into a showroom and buy everything that we want. A lot of people go around the breakers' yards and they'll buy a bike that's been accident damaged and they'll put it back together. So let's say you walk into a breakers and you see an R1 that's got some heavy damage, it's pretty well smashed up. It's going to cost you a lot of money to put that back on the road, isn't it? Because plastic is very expensive, an awful lot of bodywork on an R1, and there's all the electrics and the clocks and things like that. But there's nothing to say that you need to put it back on the road in standard trim. Look at this here, an R1, yeah, with a fancy paint job and a few bits and pieces added to it. But this was a broken bike. It was all bashed up when the lad got it. A lad called Faux has actually created this thing there. And the obvious thing with it when you first look at it is down here. Look at this. Ducati 916 style there, underseat exhaust unit. You see them on R1s occasionally, but this one is a bit special because there's an awful lot of work gone into this under there. Because if you're familiar with an R1, you'll know that underneath the seat unit there are boxes containing electrics and all sorts of bits and pieces. They've all had to be moved and changed and swapped around, so it's not just a case of bolting a new exhaust on it. Of course, fancy paint job. Wouldn't be a Street Fighter type bike, would it, without a fancy paint job? Look at this, a beautiful paint job done by a guy called Pitbull. So I better not scratch it because he's likely to be a bit vicious, isn't it? Of course, the front end, modifications again, all the fairings gone. This is basically off an enduro style bike, the sort of thing you stick on a little enduro, little headlight thing there, but it all looks very nice. Aftermarket indicators, rental bars of course, steering damper, some more engineering modifications around here on the top yoke. That's not, well, nothing like standard, it's all been shaped and cut out down there, all very fancy and all heavily polished. So there you go, you can have what is basically a production bike, but you don't have to bother with plastic, and you can look quite different if you want.
Now, if you have created yourself a Street Fighter, obviously you're going to put yourself a fancy exhaust system on it. And you can buy loads of different brands. I mean, you've got the Carbon Can company here who've done this titanium one, and you've got G-Force here who've done this carbon fibre. And most companies do the multicoloured ones with varying changings of colours as they go down the can. But these guys have done one extra little bit, and it is amazing. Look at that. A painted, an airbrush can. Now, they obviously sell the standard cans and they do them for less than 100 quid. But if you want one as fancy as that, to your own design that is as well, you're looking at a couple of £100, and understandably so. Now, the obvious question, which was my obvious question, was, is it going to mark easy and will it blister and come off? Well, apparently they've had a can on a bike just like this for 18 months, no problem whatsoever. So they've sussed the job out and now you can buy them.
Now, we know that many of the engines used in these Street Fighter special type bikes are Gsxr motors because they're a good workhorse and bulletproof engine, but here's one that's a little bit different. Fireblade engine in this one down there, so this is going to go well, isn't it? 900 cc's of Fireblade motor there, and lots of other bits of other bikes as well. This tanker, I think it's Fireblade. It's hard to tell sometimes because they're modified and they're chopped up and changed around, but I think it's a Fireblade tank, although of course heavy modifications here on the top with the filler cap and this nice chrome inlay here and a beautiful paint job as well. Up at the front here, clocks are completely different. Again, no fairing on any of this. That's off an R1, and of course the standard sort of braided hoses and aftermarket headlamps, etc. All nicely polished up and all very fancy. But look at this here now. I'm not exactly sure what this is. I've had a good look at this, and I think this is a seat unit off an R6. I don't think it's an R1. I think it's an R6. But the seat itself is different. It's got a nice, comfy Corbin seat there, and anyone who does a lot of touring will know all about Corbin seats. Nice, comfy thing there. Further down there as well at the back, of course, the obligatory heavily polished swing arm and nice polished wheels and all that. And a very, very nice looking bike. It'd look nice parked up next to anything, this, and of course it'll go well as well with that motor. But the important thing I want to show you about this is this, the frame. So what's so special about the frame, you might say? Well, it's a nice frame, beautiful finish on it, but would you believe this is the ultimate in DIY, because this guy has actually made this frame at home. It's a homemade frame, and you look at the quality on it, you pay an awful lot of money and you don't get anything like that quality. It is absolutely beautiful, an absolute credit to him, and he's just sold it as well, so there you go. But if you've got something like this, obviously very different, you need different gear to go with it. And let me just shoot over here and show you this. You want something different? Look at that! Would they see you coming with that on? Beautiful helmet there, all specially made to order. And would you believe you can buy that helmet for about 550 quid? Not bad, eh?
Street fighter machines inevitably have various different strange shaped plastics around them in the way of fairings up front and seat pieces at the back. Well, an often used accessory is such as these, which is a hugger. What is a hugger, you might ask? Well, there is one, in this case an ice blue for a Gsxr 9. This is the chain guard, this is a hugger, goes over the back tyre, stops all the muck and dirt going over your rear shock absorber. Right, you can get them in plain black, you can get them in carbon finish, but this is a new thing done by Red Fox, and you can now get them done in fancy colours. Look at that for the SP1 in the Honda logo. And here we have one for the 2000 Fireblade, all fused in. So you can even have them pre-painted. They do cost you a little bit more, but nonetheless it's got to be worth it. That's an extra 25 quid's worth.
Well, they are very, very impressive machines, you have to agree. Fantastic bit of engineering. In fact, they're so impressive that we're going to show you some more next week.
But still to come on Two Wheels this week, Jeff continues his story of the British bike from Birmingham's National Motorcycle Museum.